Grynch.
Greetings, friends, horror fans, lovers of the occult, and welcome back to Grynch After Midnight. Tonight, we have a very special episode. As we sort of shift gears, I wanted to present some original material. These are just stories that I've written, poems, things that I believe fit the theme of this channel quite well. So welcome. Have a seat, and let's get into it. But before we do, I'd like to read a synopsis of how these channels got started. See, what had happened was, on one of my After Midnight videos, a user by the name of Grynch1984 decided to summarize my channel in a very clever and comical way. And he left a comment stating the following. He started a YouTube channel during a time as a viral pandemic swept the planet. Doom did not deter him with his desire to be known. His life and his family had made him too busy to pursue what he really wanted. Now, with time off of work, he could shine. His heart raced, his pulse increased as he turned on the laptop sitting in front of him. This was it, he thought. This is the beginning of a new life. He glanced up at his image in the large mirror he had hung on the wall behind his desk. He smiled, ran his fingers through his hair, and looked behind him to make sure the room looked just right. He wanted his soon-to-be fans to see a clean and tidy room. His first video went well. He had so many ideas for his new channel that he couldn't sleep. For days, for nights, he planned and madly wrote ideas that spontaneously popped into his head. He became so obsessed that his wife and son thought he had lost his mind. He was soon making them the butt of his jokes, pranks, and even parodies. They begged him to stop, but with every new subscriber, he became more and more obsessed. He was using his cat, his dog, his sister. No one was safe from his pranks and jokes, and his need to shine. After a few months, the pandemic had run its course, and millions had died. His channel had grown to a meager amount from which he had not made a dime yet. He sat down and turned on the computer once again. The glow of the screen on his face made his eyes open wide, and he was once again caught in his image in the mirror. His hair was disheveled, and his red eyes had dark, black circles. He looked behind him, and he saw the familiar room, but this time it was dark. The family photos hung crooked above the worn couch, where he saw his family slumped over and lying on top of each other. He then saw the red, glowing eyes of his dog in the corner, the cat dangling from his wet mouth. So thank you, Grynch1984. I believe that about sums it up. Let's get into the stories, shall we? These are 3 tales of woe, tales of despair, and just general things you don't want to hear after midnight when you're about to go to sleep. But I'm glad you're here. and I'm glad you're hearing them. So without further ado, let's kick off this Friday night right. And let's get into it. She nearly died in an elevator. Christine was walking home late one night after work. It was dark and near midnight. She lived in an apartment building that had an elevator. As she got into the elevator, just as the door was about to close, a strange man in a red hoodie entered. He apologized for frightening her, and he, without making eye contact, asked her upon which floor she was getting off.
15,
she said quietly. Without a word, the man casually presses the buttons for 14, then 15. With the elevator on its way, he asked her if he could borrow her cell phone, but she declined out of suspicion, instead isolating herself in the corner of the elevator. After seconds of silence that seemed like hours, the elevator arrived at floor 14, and the door opened. The mysterious stranger slowly walked out of the door and turned around, facing the elevator and Christine, staring at her for a moment, then turning and walking away. Slowly, the door started to close, and from within the gap, Christine could see him heading for the stairs and walking up, pulling a knife from his pocket. And now, the shadow. Boxing with my shadow, taking cheap shots to the chest. It beats the goodness out of me, and I'm stuck with the rest. The demon side, tucked deep inside, my candle barely flickers. Blood, water, pancake syrup, shadow and I much thicker. The day I met my shadow, no defenses I possessed. Brought to my knees by its disease, upon it I obsessed. Rusted mind, uprooted soul, my energy depleted. Bound and broken on the floor, I'm utterly defeated. To feel the shadow's presence, one must only doubt oneself. The doubt then leads to anger, knocking books off of the shelf. The anger wanes and pain remains. I tell you, there's no limit. To the depths it pulls you once it grabs. You'll know it once you're in it. The shadow waits in silence, but trust is always there. Not inner peace, but violence, for which you're never, ever prepared. The shadow undetected, without light to call it out. False sense of security beyond the shadow of a doubt. And now, Madman's Lullaby. My belfry is barren, the bats left long ago. My seams begin tearing and starting to show. Sanity, six-letter word with no meaning. Split-second thoughts, consciousness streaming. Then the thought train derails, and I lose the trail, trying to course correct, knowing I'll fail. How many voices in my head aren't mine? The voices grow louder, my voice last in line, spitting out fingernails covered in blood, and wishing I'd left one to scrape the eye crud. This journey is endless, so why keep on trudging? The nurse in the hallway is silently judging. She calls me to Medline. It's time for my candy. Raving mad lunatic, that's how they brand me. But I know much better. I don't let it faze me. For I am the sane one. All of you are the crazies. Sleep is overrated anyway. I could rip every hair from my head at the follicle. I'm up at all hours, feeling quite diabolical. I could bite every nail from my hand at the cuticle. Insomnia is somehow mysteriously beautiful. Thoughts enter the mind that at daylight are hidden, temptations indulged that were once thought forbidden. The seconds like minutes, the hours like years. Now these are the moments to face secret fears. The clock on the table seems distantly far. My neural transmitters are instantly scarred. My brain doing backflips and mental gymnastics. One moment is torture, another's fantastic. Mood shifts like door hinges, constantly swinging, internally screaming, externally singing. My eyelids are sandpaper, eyeballs are stones. The worst part of all, I'm completely alone. The night begins taunting me, thoughts become tangled. My mouth has run dry as my sanity's mangled, desperately begging these thoughts to stop racing, agonizingly counting the hours I'm facing, missing the sleep that I hoped I'd be prizing. The morning sun creeps now upon the horizon. This has been Grinch After Midnight. Thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next week, and we'll leave it somewhat of a surprise, because I'll be honest, I don't know what I'm doing next week yet, but I promise you, it'll be a nightmarish, hellish good time. Sweet dreams.